Welcome back, friends. Have you ever inherited or acquired an art piece and wondered about its value? Today, Andy sits down with Christine Whaling, an experienced fine art advisor who offers an example of what to look for when they take a look at one of Andy's new pieces in her collection. Christine's career began in London at Christie's, and now she brings her specialized services to private owners across the country.
Hello, everyone. Today we are here with Christine Whaling Art Advisory, and you are based out of Denver. I am so happy that we got connected recently. I wish I would have known about you just in the last few years, and we can talk about that later down the road, but welcome.
Well, thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to join this podcast with you.
Yes, and thank you for coming up from Denver, which is, a couple hours away, but you travel everywhere.
All the time.
With your business.
All the time.
So with that being said, why don't you give a little background about yourself? And I know you came from the auction world, but how you segued into your own company.
Sure, absolutely. I grew up in Denver, so I'm originally from just south of the city, but I've always appreciated art, and wanting to be in that commercial space really came about once I had received my bachelor's degree and master's degree in art history. Right around that time, I was living in London, and I was able to become part of the antiquities department at Christie's. I eventually transitioned into the New York team and worked through various different departments while I was there. But while I was in New York, I had this realization that I really loved working with clients across all different aspects of their consignment, whether it was the bidding, buying, post-sale, picking up their works, or if they had something that they thought might be of interest to sell with Christie's. And I wanted to bring that experience back to Denver. So I came back about 5 years ago, was working with another auction company out here, Hindman. I was overseeing their trust estate and private client group for the Rocky Mountain region. Hindman went through a merger with Freeman, so expanding their presence, which is such an incredible opportunity. But I also felt it was the right time for me to look at starting my own business. It was something that I had in the back of my mind for quite some time. And I really wanted to help clients, again, move across those different sales channels, whether it's the auction side, galleries, estate sales, everything from fine art, furniture, silver, watches, jewelry, couture items, you name it. I wanted to help clients place those items in the correct market channels and also help walk them through that process as a single point of contact and manage those projects for them. So I opened my own business about 2 years ago, which is very exciting. And I was also able to add on the appraisal side. So with that, it's appraisal reports for insurance, IRS purposes, estate planning, as well as financial planning as well.
And I would imagine that is probably growing in that area of the appraisals. Various reasons, insurance has become a hot topic, probably in your part of the world as well as mine in real estate. That's a common topic that we discuss. So I always love for my clients to be proactive instead of reactive. So having those appraisals on collections, and it could be furnishings, it could be anything, is definitely an important factor, especially in our area. We have as you know, there's some very high-end homes here, which then includes high-end furnishings and needs to be documented, and you don't want to wait till the after effect.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is very similar with the real estate side to the tangible personal property, which is what we call it. So that encompasses art, collectibles. That's really the tangible personal property side. I'm a member of the International Society of Appraisers, ISA. It's one of the professional organizations which you can belong to as a tangible personal property appraiser. One of the compliance factors that we look at, and of course we adhere to, is USPAP, so Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. It's the same thing that's used by real property appraisers. Yeah, so there's a lot of synergy there. And just as you mentioned, it's so important to be proactive about documenting your collection, whether that's the photographs, the descriptions, retaining those original documents if you can. Receipts of purchase are always helpful. If you've had past appraisals, that's very helpful too, because on the insurance side, of course, you have to prove that the item existed in that specific condition, and that you were the owner as well. And that can be very difficult to do if you don't have any documentation to back that up.
And that's part of your collection management service that you provide. So just for everyone to know, we'll get into the art advisory in just a moment, but collection management is one aspect as well as the appraisals. So you're having different segments and different levels that you service for people. I just know up here, personal property, artwork, a lot of times we have that as an exclusion here for various reasons of the worth or value, and sometimes people don't understand what that value is. So that's where I think it could be very useful for you to come and document and have that. So, well, in our world, I try to tell people if you really don't, if that's a non-negotiable, it could be a value down here, a value up here, take it out of the home because that can muddy the water. But I think it would be helpful to have people understanding the value, whether they're selling their home or not even selling their home, of just having that documentation.
Right, right. And Andy, I think maybe it's similar to your side as well, and I'd love to hear. I always say it's best to know what you have when it comes to tangible personal property. Likewise, it's always probably good to know what the real estate market is doing, particularly if you own a home or if you're interested in purchasing.
Yeah, and there's even been stories within Sotheby's, right, the auction house. We have Sotheby's International Realty, and then we have the Sotheby's Auction House, and I know you're familiar with that. But, you know, we've heard the stories that people really didn't know the value of whether it's jewelry, art, collectibles, and that's where it's so important to know, should it go to the auction house, such as Sotheby's Auction House? And that's where you could advise people
Yes.
of how to best, you know, whether they want to keep it or sell it, how to best advise them
Yes.
on those pieces.
Absolutely. And those are the projects that I enjoy the most and find the most fulfilling, but also provide the most value for my clients. And I'll work with clients whether it's a single item, an entire collection, or an entire estate. So working with someone on the advisory side, it's exactly as you mentioned. It's getting to see the pieces in person, understand what the goals are for the collection. If it is selling, then I put together a customized sales strategy for those clients of, based on the items that you have, here's where it would be the best fit in the market. Here's what I anticipate for a timeline. Here's how much comparable items have sold for recently, and here's why I've recommended those specific sales firms. In our world, we'll call it a broker, but I lump it underneath the advisory side since it's close to that buying and selling, just two flip sides of the same coin. So working with clients to help them disposition those items, maximize that value, but also being an independent advisor, you have someone who's looking over these sales contracts for you, who can advocate for you as your client, and who can help full service, whether it's working through the pickup or the shipping and making sure to get those quotes for you, and finding the best prices because I have those connections in the industry. So it's really full circle from start to finish. And I liken it to almost having your attorney look over an agreement that you're looking to sign, right? Just to have someone who is advocating for you as my client in the marketplace, being your agent.
Yeah. No, so important. I wish, like I said, I'm going to share a story about a home I had listed, and she had an art collection in the Santa Fe style art, and she did ask me, saying, you know, how do I get these appraised? We really didn't know, and that is not my area of expertise, is in the art, especially this Santa Fe. And so ultimately she wound up, I suggested, take it to an expert, let someone really identify these for you. And so she did take those pieces down to Santa Fe and put them on consignment. But this is where that would have been really helpful, having you coming up from Denver, identifying those pieces and saying, here, let me guide you on how to best because she wanted to sell those pieces. So that's an example of how to utilize your resource on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Darn it.
And hopefully you can save on shipping as well. Colorado is a unique market, Denver as well. And depending on the artist or the type of item that you have in your collection, Colorado may not be the best place for it. I've worked through a number of different estates recently, and a few that we've had, we did go out of state just because of the particular artist. The artist market was outside. This one was in Los Angeles. So we went to Los Angeles for that market. But of course, you think about everything nuts to bolts, from bringing that piece off the wall, getting it packaged for shipment, going through the auction house, getting those estimates, getting those sales contracts. I work with you directly as my clients to help with what's the interest leading up to the sale as well. But it is, it's a full service opportunity there too. But with these homes, and we had talked about this a little bit earlier too, if you're looking to stage a home or if you're looking to sell a home, if items need to be out of the house, where do they go? Are they interested in selling those items? So having that conversation with clients as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah, I'm curious. So within your business and being in it as long as you have, do you have also on the flip side, for those out there that may be interested on a reverse, that they come to you and say, hey, hi, I'm interested in purchasing in this type of art. Do you have already like a list of kind of off market as you would some pieces, or you would know how to locate them for them?
Yes. So I would start from working with the client on what their vision is and what their budget is, of course. So there's a few exercises that I do when a client's looking to develop their collection. Have they already started? Are they just thinking about it at this point? What is their comfort level with purchasing and doing transactions in the art market? Because there's a couple of different channels that you can go. You can do the private sale, which is just that of, I have another client who I know is looking to sell a piece. I can broker a private deal for you to have that, and it won't be on the broader market. That's what we call private sale. Another way that you might find pieces is online. Through online platforms, you can see these. They're pretty much open all the time, right? There's no
I've seen
closing
them.
hours. Open 24/7, so whenever you're in the mood to purchase art. And then one of the other more popular ways to buy art would be galleries as well. So you go in, you see what you like to purchase, and you can purchase it there. And then finally, auction houses are another big area in the market. So when you have something that's at auction, it comes up on a specific sale date, you need to purchase it then. Unless it doesn't sell, you might be able to get an after sale offer. But those pieces, once they're gone, they're gone. You never know when they're going to show back up to the market. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. But I'm sure you have seen some amazing pieces and collections.
Yes.
Anything that really sticks out as a really special story you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working with an estate where we had everything from fine art, couture, jewelry, as well as watches. And we had a particular piece of jewelry come up for auction. It was out of state at one of the major metropolitan areas for jewelry. And this piece, we knew it was correct. It was diamonds, of course. And the market took very well to it. It actually sold for 4 times the estimate. So when you think about that transactional value to a client, if it sells for 4 times as much as what they were expecting, that's significant and that's meaningful. So in this case, being able to share that story with those who are administering the estate was incredible.
I'm sure those happen. Well, you can see it on the Antique Roadshow. You can see it. I mean, those stories do appear in the news of just that they were in someone's attic, and people just don't realize the value. That's why it's important having someone that actually can help you discover those values.
And it can unfortunately go to the flip side as well, which I see this regularly, where someone says, I was told that this was worth X amount of dollars. I was told it was worth $50,000. And unfortunately, the market just doesn't support that any longer. These are often for pieces that maybe were purchased in the 80s, unfortunately, where it was a completely different market. Or it's family lore where they say, I was always told that this piece would be worth this much and this would be part of my inheritance. And that's why I always say it's good to know what you have, particularly if you're working with a financial planner or a wealth manager who can help make those decisions for you. So once the item's sold, where do those funds go and how do they best fit in with your interests and your goals for the long term?
It goes along with the real estate trends and markets. It's why it's so important having an expert such as yourself in that area, and whether it's the real estate market, it can be such a micro market. I get questions all the time and people putting their comments thinking that our area of our market reflects everywhere else in the nation, and that's not necessarily true. So we are talking quite a bit about the legacy aspect and the generational wealth that's going to be transferred. That's already starting to happen, but even in the next 10, 15 years, I'm sure that's similar that you have in the art world, what you are going to be experiencing or already are experiencing in that. Can you touch upon that?
Absolutely. And we are starting to see this shift already. And we talk about that generational wealth transfer that's coming and it's already in process. And that not only pertains to the real estate side or financial assets, it also relates to art and collectibles. And on the legacy planning side, I would say two parts to that. The first thought that I have is, again, going along with it's always good to know what you have as part of legacy planning. I've been through this a few times where as part of the estate, it's going through and finding what was there originally and not having those original receipts and trying to decide where things need to go, which market channel they need to go to at an already stressful time often for those beneficiaries or those who are helping to work through that estate process. But legacy planning, I always say it's best to do up front. It's always good to know what you have, always good to have a plan in place, in particular if you'd like certain people to have certain items, or if you'd like to do charitable donation, having your wishes set up front. Always work with an estate planning attorney, as I say, that's my disclosure. But having a plan for those items that's already set out, and similarly to what we talked about on the appraisal side, having photographs, having descriptions, again, so we know what is there. On the back end of that, the estate side, we are seeing this dearth of property that's coming to market from estates, and this isn't new. This is something that's been going on for hundreds of years. Christie's and Sotheby's, of course, have helped to bring to sale many of the famous collections over the centuries. Of course, many major names have come through even recently. You can think about the Rockefeller collection that sold at Christie's recently within the past few years as well. One big name. But collectors really love these estate items as well because they're fresh and they're new to the market. So it presents an interesting opportunity of new things are coming in, but then is it trending along with what the tastes are in the current market?
Yeah. Okay, along that line, what are the current trends? Yeah. I have in my closet, I hate to say this, but I will admit to it, I have things that probably have come back in trend.
Yeah.
I just couldn't let go of years ago. So are you seeing that in the art world of where maybe what was popular in the 60s or 70s? Okay, I don't have clothes that old, but back then you're starting to see a trend with that. And do you recommend people holding on to some of those items as a collective? Because I know even with the family estates that maybe some family members collected years ago and then it gets passed on to the next generation. What do you suggest about that? Or what are you seeing? Give us your little top secrets here.
So, as I always say, it depends. That is the key answer. So it depends on the artist, it depends on the type of item as well. There are certain things that will always hold and retain value. For example, silver, if nothing else for the melt value. That has the intrinsic worth of it, right? And if you add provenance or a specific maker to it, that will then add to the value. But we can think about it similar to real estate trends or interior design trends as well. There's this shift that's that's happening, and I think we're starting to see more of it, but the shift towards maximalism, where previously we're very much in a modern state as it comes to interior design and what collectors were looking for. And I think that has changed. For example, one area that's particularly of interest to me and is personally something I'm very passionate about, old master paintings. Something that for a very long time, there was this drive in the industry to try to bring in those new collectors, whether it's placing an old master next to a contemporary work and seeing how those two have a great dialogue with each other. So I think it's all about what interests you is the first thing. What's in your price range as well. Buy what you like, buy with your heart, but don't overpay as well. So being cognizant of what similar items are selling for on the market. So I know that's a roundabout way of answering your question, but I hope it's helpful.
The old and the new together.
Yes.
Yeah, mix and match.
Yeah.
Where it was
Yes.
more of the modern. And I'm even seeing that in the real estate market here. I personally have had from my clients, they're starting, not all, but some are saying, I do not want that ultra contemporary look. I'm over it. It's been overdone. Not everyone feels that way, but I have started to see that a little bit more, that they still like the modern and fresh, clean lines, but not as stark as what it was. But that's common. Things come in and out, colors, and I would imagine that's what it is with art. It's an interesting and fascinating world of art, and it is very personal. So kind of like homes, it's what a buyer's willing to pay.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes we don't set the market price, it's what the buyers set the price at of what they're willing to pay.
In particular, if you have more than one buyer who's interested, right? And you get into that competition side, it's what two people are willing to pay for it. But you're spot on, just like residences, art collections and art or collectibles in general can be very personal as well. And something that maybe is someone else's taste might not align with someone else, and that's okay too. And we think about art and collectibles as an investment. Andy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the real estate market, whether it's the investment side or just purchasing something because you love it and you have that passion for either the location or the place itself.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I have had listings. I have a great example. Was a listing that I had for $13,250,000. And I had some brokers question that as far as saying, well, that the comps don't support that number. And my quick answer to that response was, this will be an emotional buy. And sure enough, I wound up having a couple offers on that property that it was just what you spoke about, two people really wanting it. It was totally out of whack at the time with the comps, but it was more of an emotional buy because it was, as I say, a unicorn of the location, and just it was the first time it came on the market since it was built. So that's a perfect example of the emotional buy that then sets the current market value. And I've had that several times of the price because of the emotional buy, and it was turnkey. So there are variances in it as far as being if someone is the investor and strictly looking at comps. I understand that with the numbers, but then you also have the emotional buy, which will then set the new market price.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much synergy between the real estate side and the tangible personal property side. Of course, we have the comparisons, which we look at to accurately price property on the market, but there is that buyer psychology as well, and there's this art to not only placing things in the market, but making sure that they're seen by the right buyers or collectors and that it is priced appropriately, but understanding where that fits in the market too, because you don't want to start too high, you don't want to start too low, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I always tell clients, I do not set the price. The buyers really set the fair market value. And that was a perfect example on that particular property and others. So Yes, thank you for that synergy of the two.
Absolutely.
So, Christine, okay, here's a piece that I have. What would someone do to go through of saying, okay, is this a value, or how would you look at this piece, and what would you want to share with people out there? This is just one example.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that I'd like to share is please always feel empowered to do your own research as well. So we'll talk a little bit about how I look at prints and paintings as well. Feel free to hopefully use some of this knowledge if it's helpful for you as well. But we'll go through just some of the things that I look at in the advisory capacity, which is very similar to what we look at when we're appraising works as well. So one thing that always strikes me is how big is the work? What are the dimensions? So we'll look at the frame dimensions, which is from the outside here, and then we'll of course look at what we call the site. So in this case, it's the image itself, should be these corners here. So we can see that it's framed, which is of course this outside edge. And then we also have the matting that's on the inside. And this one's actually double matted. We have two little mats in there as well. And it's also glazed, which is what we say when an item has either the glass or acrylic finishing on top. So this piece is a print. We can tell that based on the medium that this work is on. So medium print is one of them. It could be watercolor on paper, it could be an oil on canvas or an oil on panel, for example. This one is a print. And we can also tell, another key indicator, it's signed just here on the bottom right. And it's actually signed in pencil. And we also have an edition here in pencil. So an edition will tell you which number of the edition this is. So in this case, it's editioned from 500. But you might come across a few other different types of editions. For example, one would be AP, which means artist proof. So in general, a print that's 1 out of 500 might not necessarily be more valuable than one that's
I was going to ask
349.
that question, is the lower number more valuable? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And same thing with artist proofs. Depends on the artist, but generally it's not something that would indicate more or less value. What would be significantly of interest would be the condition of the piece. So whether it's edition 1 or if it's 349, if one piece significantly has better condition, whether there's no watermarks, if it's still in great condition, it's going to be worth more than the other work as well. So with prints, the other thing that we'll look at too is the type of paper and the type of printing process as well. It's very in-depth, so I won't go into it here, but those are just some of the things that we look at as well. And ideally, we'd like to see prints out of the frame because there could be things hiding along the margins here, whether that's a blind stamp or a watermark, which could give us more information about the piece itself.
Okay, and you mentioned something about the double signed. What does that mean?
Yes, so this piece actually has a double signature. Just over here on the bottom left, you can see it right in here. And then of course we have the second signature, which is the double pencil. Sometimes that will happen just depending on the method of printing that the artists use. Once they pull that print, if their signature was included, sometimes they might sign it again in pencil as well.
Okay, and so for those that are looking at different pieces that they have acquired or maybe interested in, how would someone go about finding more information? I say you Google everything, right?
Yes.
Start with the Google research since it's easy. Is that correct?
Yes,
is that what you recommend?
Yes, absolutely. And as you're doing your own research, Google's a great place to start, especially if you don't know the artist. Do a Google image search, see what comes back. If you do know the artist, you're already one leg up. You can do some additional research that way as what type of medium the artists use, when they were working, where they were working as well, and what they're known for. Internet is a dearth of information these days, so.
And I did do that because I was not familiar. I acquired this and I then immediately started searching and saw that this is Ray Ellis, and he's a popular artist. I'm not sure where, I can't remember now. You knew right away. So it was interesting just to do a little research myself, just to learn more about the artist. And then from there, any suggestions? You can contact you. I know that.
Yeah.
If it looks like on some of the research that these are really valuable pieces.
Yeah.
But like in this case, being a print, I mean, is that something that you feel it's as much as what a buyer's willing to pay basically on here? So probably not worth the money of spending for an appraisal.
Yeah, and it just depends on what the intended use is. So if you need an appraisal for insurance or tax purposes, you need a formal appraisal, and it's something that you should pay for. If it's something that you're interested in selling or you're just curious to know the value, you don't need it for any other intended uses, you can, of course, always reach out to an auction house too, or a gallery. They would be able to tell you what they would be willing to offer it at. And Andy, I know we were just thinking about this together as well, where when an auction house gives you a valuation, it's not an appraisal, so it can't be used like one, but it's almost like listing a house where it's the asking price. The item could sell above that, could sell below, of course, just depending on what the reserve is. And that's a confidential amount between you as the consignor and the auction house where they won't sell it below that.
So in the case of a print like this, let's say someone came across and they acquired a piece like this, it's most likely not worth doing an appraisal, but someone wants to sell it. What then is the best avenue to sell it? Because this is a painting, and then you have shipping and, and everything to kind of consider and when you're selling. And if you're in an area that is not a populated area like we are in our area, but you're not in the city, then what do you feel is the best avenue for people as an amateur?
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on the type of piece, the artist, and where you're located. Some things are best sold regionally, some things are best sold at a national or an international level. And that's where I always love to help my clients too, and empower them to better understand the market, where this piece fits within it, and helping to make that placement for them and those suggestions as well. Everything full service, from where I recommend the item be sold, what's happening in the current market, as well as making those arrangements for pickup if it needs to be picked up and shipped out.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love that you're providing this service, and so appreciate you making the effort of coming up here today.
I
And
so appreciate
you will
it.
travel, Christine will travel.
Yes.
Well, lastly, do you work initially with people if they are from another state? Do you get on a Zoom and have a conversation and then at least give them a sense of, is this worth flying out and seeing you in person?
Yes, absolutely. That's always the first step, whether it's a phone call, a Zoom. If you're based locally, or if I happen to be in the area, always happy to do a complimentary home visit as well to see the pieces. I'll go to homes, offices, I've been to storage units, so wherever the items are, especially if they're difficult to move, happy to take a look and discuss in person too. So even if it's not something that makes sense to move forward with my services, always happy to help offer recommendations for those next steps.
Okay, I may dig out a few items for you to take a look at
I'm
before
ready.
you head back. All right. Well, thank you, Christine. So appreciate you. And for those looking for the appraisals, their collection is having that in the management, estate sales, reach out to Christine. A great resource for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it. So nice to see you and be on the podcast today.
You appreciate it.